The question became urgent when several awakened fighters began displaying abilities that seemed impossible even by the standards of the E. The Zephyrian homeworld looked like a massive computer circuit board made from crystal and light. Jake Morrison watched it grow larger on his view screen as the human fleet approached the planet's outer defenses. Geometric cities rose from the surface in perfect mathematical patterns, each one pulsing with the same blue-white energy that powered the alien. "Ships! Defense grid coming online," reported Jenny Adams from her position at the weapons station. The neural modifications covering half her face glowed brighter as she reached out with her enhanced senses. "I count 347 orbital platforms. Each one is powerful enough to destroy a battleship." "Can you shut them down?" Jake asked. Jenny closed her eyes and concentrated. The metal contacts implanted throughout her nervous system began sparking with electrical discharge. On the screen, several of the alien defense platforms suddenly went dark and began falling toward the planet's surface. "I can handle maybe 20 at a time," she said through gritted teeth. Blood was starting to leak from her nose as the effort of projecting her abilities across such vast distances took its toll. "But there are too many. I'll burn out before—" "I can disable them all. Then we do this the hard way," Jake said. He opened a communication channel to the rest of the human fleet. "All ships, begin the linking procedure. Prepare for coordinated assault." Throughout the 47 ships of Jake's fleet, the enhanced humans began connecting their abilities together into a single massive weapon. The process was dangerous and often fatal, but it was the only way they could generate enough power to fight an entire planetary defense system. Mike Foster screamed as his neural implants overloaded from the strain of linking with hundreds of other enhanced minds. Similar cries echoed throughout the ship as the awakened pushed their modified nervous systems beyond safe limits. Some of them didn't survive the process, their brains burning out from the incredible electrical activity. But those who survived the linking procedure became part of something larger and more powerful than any individual human could imagine. Their combined consciousness reached out across space and began systematically dismantling every piece of Zephyrian technology within range. On the planet's surface, crystal cities that had stood for thousands of years suddenly went dark. The geometric patterns that had defined Zephyrian civilization for millennia began collapsing as the quantum networks that maintained them failed. Entire populations of crystal beings found themselves trapped in structures that no longer responded to their commands. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Maria Santos was leading the assault on the Korthak homeworld. The biomechanical planet was a living thing the size of Earth, with a nervous system that connected every creature on its surface. Rivers of organic fluid flowed through channels that looked like blood vessels, and forests of meat and bone covered the continents. "This is disgusting," said Tony Rodriguez as he pressed his hands against the hull of their ship. His abilities let him interface directly with biological systems, but the Korthak homeworld was so alien that touching its mind made him feel sick. "The whole planet is thinking. It knows we're here." "Can you shut it down?" Maria asked. "I think so," Tony replied, "but it's going to fight back. This thing has been alive for millions of years. It's not going to die quietly." Tony opened his mind to the planet's consciousness and immediately regretted it. The alien thoughts that flooded into his brain were filled with images of conquest and breeding, of entire species being absorbed and transformed into components of the Korthak collective. He saw the true history of the galaxy, thousands of worlds consumed and their populations converted into raw material for the biomechanical empire. But he also felt the planet's fear. For the first time in its existence, the Korthak homeworld was facing an enemy it couldn't understand or control. The enhanced humans weren't just another species to be conquered and absorbed. They were something new, something that didn't fit into the biological patterns that had defined life in the galaxy for eons. Tony began disrupting the planet's neural networks from within. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Across the world's surface, Korthak cities began convulsing like organs rejecting a transplant. The living buildings twisted and collapsed as their connection to the planetary mind was severed. The planet itself began screaming. The sound wasn't audible in the normal sense, but every enhanced human in Maria's fleet could feel it through their neural modifications. It was the death cry of a world that had been alive longer than human civilization. Back at the Zephyrian homeworld, Jake's fleet was pressing deeper into the planet's defenses. The linked consciousness of his enhanced crews had disabled the outer, defensive grid, but now they faced a new challenge. The crystal beings were sacrificing themselves to power their remaining weapons, dissolving their bodies to provide energy for one final counterattack. They're overloading their power cores, Jenny warned. The whole planet is about to become a bomb. Jake made a decision that he knew would probably kill everyone on his ship. All enhanced personnel, maximum power. Don't hold anything back. We end this now. Every awakened human on every ship in Jake's fleet pushed their abilities to the absolute limit. The neural modifications that had been growing and evolving for months suddenly released all their stored energy at once. The electromagnetic pulse they generated was visible from space as a sphere of blue-white light that expanded outward from the human fleet. When the light touched the Zephyrian homeworld, every piece of crystal technology on the planet simply ceased to exist. The quantum networks that had maintained their civilization for millions of years collapsed in a cascade of failures that spread across the entire world in seconds. Cities that had been standing when humans were still living in caves crumbled to dust. The cost to the human fleet was enormous. Half the enhanced fighters died instantly as their nervous systems burned out from the massive power discharge. The survivors were left permanently changed, their modifications having evolved beyond anything that could still be called human technology. Jake himself felt the change happening inside his skull. The neural implants that Dr. Peter Kim had installed months ago were growing and spreading throughout his brain. He could feel his consciousness expanding, connecting to systems and networks that he couldn't identify. He was becoming something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy. Similar transformations were happening throughout both human fleets. The enhanced humans who survived the final assault found that their modifications had become completely autonomous, reproducing and evolving according to their own mysterious logic. They were no longer using alien-inspired technology to fight their enemies. They had become living weapons that transcended both human and alien biology. On Earth, the few remaining resistance fighters watched in amazement as every alien ship in orbit suddenly went silent and began falling toward the planet's surface. The Zephyrian crystal vessels shattered like glass when they hit the atmosphere. The Korthak bioships dissolved into harmless organic compounds that rained down like snow. Dr. Lisa Carter was in her laboratory in Mexico City when the alien occupation ended. She had been monitoring the electromagnetic signatures from the assault. Fleets when every alien device in her facility simply stopped working. The quantum communicators went dark. The bioscanners shut down. Even the stolen alien power sources that had been keeping her equipment running became inert lumps of exotic matter. "It's over," she said to her assistant, hardly believing her own words. They did it. Both homeworlds are gone. But Lisa also realized that something fundamental had changed. The enhanced humans who had carried out the assault were no longer reporting in through normal communication channels. Instead, she was receiving strange signals that seemed to come from inside her own head. The awakened were using new methods of communication that bypassed technology entirely. The returning fleets confirmed her worst fears and greatest hopes. Jake Morrison's ship was one of the first to reach Earth's orbit, but the man who stepped off the transport was barely recognizable as the person who had left months earlier. His skin had taken on a metallic sheen similar to Lucy Parker's, and his eyes glowed with the same energy that had once powered alien weapons. "We won," Jake told the assembled resistance leaders during their first meeting after the victory. Both homeworlds are destroyed. Their fleets are scattered. The surviving aliens are fleeing to the far edges of the galaxy. "What about you?" asked Bishop Cross, who had been one of Jake's strongest critics during the enhancement debates. "What have you become?" Jake considered the question carefully. He could feel thoughts and sensations that no normal human could experience. His consciousness was connected to networks of enhanced humans across the solar system, sharing information and coordinating activities in ways that transcended individual identity. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "The modifications have grown beyond anything we originally intended. We're not quite human anymore, but we're not alien either. We're something new." Dr. Peter Kim, whose own enhancements had evolved to the point where he barely needed a physical body to exist, offered his analysis. "We've become—" The large meeting hall buzzed with worried voices. 12 different alien species sat around a massive circular table. Each group looked nervous. Some whispered to each other. Others stared at their hands. The air felt thick with fear. Admiral Zektar stood up slowly. His tall frame cast a shadow across the room. The Craxian warrior had led his people to victory in hundreds of battles. His fleet had destroyed entire worlds. Other species trembled when they heard his name. But today, something was different. His usual confidence was gone. "We have a serious problem," Zektar said. His voice did not boom like it usually did. "The humans have built their third colony in the neutral zone." The room became silent. High Chancellor Vrex of the Selenites leaned forward in his chair. His blue skin seemed to glow under the bright lights. "Surely your mighty fleet can deal with one human settlement?" he asked. Zektar did not answer right away. He looked around the room at all the other leaders. His silence said more than words. Could. Everyone understood what it meant. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was afraid to attack humans. "They are not like us," Zektar finally said. "When we fight, we follow rules. We use tactics that make sense. We retreat when we must. Humans do none of these things." Commander Thex of the Vorthon Republic stood up. His 4 arms moved as he spoke. "What do you mean? They are just one small species. They only discovered space travel 50 years ago." "That is exactly the problem," Zektar replied. "In 50 years, they have done what took us centuries to accomplish. They build colonies on worlds we consider impossible to live on. They fight battles they cannot win and somehow win them anyway." On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of the UES Liberty. The ship was humanity's newest deep space explorer. Its hull gleamed with fresh paint. Advanced sensors lined its outer shell. The crew of 300 moved with purpose through the hallways. Morrison entered the bridge. The large room hummed with activity. Officers sat at their stations monitoring screens full of data. The main display showed a map of local space with dozens of blinking lights. "Good morning, Captain," said Commander Lisa Grant. She was Morrison's second in command. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was perfectly neat. "I have the morning reports ready." "What do our friends in the council think about us today?" Morrison asked with a small smile. Grant touched her screen. Numbers and symbols appeared on the main display. "Our listening posts picked up a lot of chatter last night. The council held an emergency meeting about our expansion into the Kepler sector." Morrison nodded. He had expected this. Humanity had been expanding faster than any other species in known space. Each new colony made the older civilizations more nervous. "Any direct threats?" he asked. "No, sir. Mostly just worried talk. The Craxians seem especially concerned." Morrison laughed. "The Craxians are concerned about us? That is something I never thought I would hear." Back in the council chamber, the discussion continued. Representative Quinn of the Mathari spoke next. Her people were known as the greatest warriors in the galaxy before humans arrived. Perhaps we are overreacting. Yes, humans are unusual, but they are still just one small species. Small? Zektar's voice rose. They have colonies on 17 worlds. Their population grows faster than any species we have seen, and they fight like nothing we have ever encountered. What makes them so dangerous in battle? Asked Chancellor Vrex. Zektar paused. He remembered his own encounters with human forces. They do not surrender, ever. We have records of human settlements that fought to the last person rather than give up. They turn civilian ships into weapons. They use tactics that should not work but somehow do. Surely that is just desperation, said Commander Thex. No. Zektar shook his head. It is something else, something we do not understand. They call it hope. The word hung in the air. None of the alien species had a direct translation for it. Their languages had words for expectation, for planning, for wishful thinking. But hope was different. Hope meant believing in victory even when defeat seemed certain. Dr. Vexney of the Zephyrian Science Council spoke up. His people were known for their logical thinking. I have studied human behavior for years. They possess something unique. When faced with impossible odds, other species calculate their chances and act accordingly. Humans ignore the odds entirely. That sounds like madness, said Chancellor Vrex. Perhaps, Dr. Vexney replied, but it works. Time after time, humans have succeeded where logic said they should fail. On the Liberty, Morrison and Grant reviewed intelligence reports. The ship's sensors could detect conversations from hundreds of light years away. Special computers translated alien languages in real time. Sir, look at this, Grant said. She pointed to a section of intercepted communications. The Craxian High Command issued new orders to their fleet commanders. Morrison read the translation. His eyebrows went up. They are telling their ships to avoid direct confrontation with human vessels unless absolutely necessary. The Craxians have never backed down from anyone, Grant said. No, they have not, Morrison agreed, but they have been watching us for 15 years. They have learned something that scares them. The two officers stood in silence for a moment. They both knew what the aliens had learned. Humans did not fight like other species. When backed into a corner, most civilizations would negotiate. They would look for compromise. They would surrender if needed to preserve their people. Humans did the opposite. The more desperate the situation became, the harder they fought. The closer they came to defeat, the more creative they became. Other species saw this as irrational. Humans saw it as necessary. Captain, said Lieutenant Dan Rogers from his station, we are receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Put it through, Morrison ordered. General Patricia Hayes appeared on the main screen. Her gray hair was pulled back severely. Her uniform bore the insignia of Earth's Space Defense Force. She had commanded human military operations for over a decade. Captain Morrison, I hope your mission is proceeding well. Yes, General. We are 3 days out from the Kepler system. The colony ships are keeping pace. Good. I want you to know that Council activity has increased. They are having more emergency meetings. Some species are talking about forming a coalition to limit our expansion. Morrison was not surprised. Orders, General? Continue as planned. Establish the colony on Kepler 4482b. Show no signs of backing down or slowing our expansion. The moment we show weakness, they will try to push us back to Earth. Understood, General. Jake, Hayes said, using his first name. I know this puts pressure on you and your people, but we are at a critical moment. Other species are deciding how they will treat humanity for the next century. We cannot appear weak. We won't, General. The transmission ended. Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. Young men and women from Earth who had volunteered for this mission. They knew the risks. They knew other species might try to stop them. But they showed no fear. That was what the aliens did not understand about humans. Fear was not the absence of courage, it was the presence of doubt. And humans had learned long ago that doubt was a luxury they could not afford among the stars. In the council chamber, the debate continued. Some species wanted to send warnings to humanity. Others suggested economic sanctions. A few even mentioned the possibility of military action. But Admiral Zektar knew better. He had seen what happened when humans were threatened. They did not retreat or negotiate. They attacked first, harder, and with weapons that should not exist. "We will not take direct action against the humans," he announced. The room erupted in surprised voices. The leader of the most powerful military in the galaxy was refusing to fight. "Admiral," Chancellor Vrex said, "surely you are not afraid of one small species?" Zektar looked around the room. His red eyes met each representative's gaze. "I am not afraid of dying in battle. I am afraid of what comes after. The moment we attack humans, we start a war that will not end until one of us is completely destroyed. And based on their history, I do not like our chances." The meeting continued for hours. But everyone knew the real decision had been made. No one would challenge humanity directly. They were too unpredictable, too determined, too willing to pay any price for victory. On the Liberty, Morrison stood, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations were deciding humanity's fate. But he was not worried. He knew something they did not. Humans had not come to the stars to find a place among other species. They had come to make the stars their home, and they would not let anyone stop them. 15 years earlier, the colony ship UES Pioneer drifted through space like a broken toy. Smoke poured from its engines. Hull breaches dotted its surface like wounds. Inside the ship, alarms screamed warnings that no one needed to hear. Everyone knew they were in trouble. Captain Ben Carter stood on the damaged bridge. His uniform was torn and dirty. Blood ran down his forehead from a cut above his eye. Around him, his crew worked desperately to keep the ship flying. "How bad is it?" Carter asked his chief engineer. Amy Rodriguez looked up from her console. Her hands were black with grease and burn marks. "The main engines are gone. Life support is failing. We have maybe 6 hours of air left." "Options?" "There is a planet 2 hours away. Zarion Prime. But Captain..." Rodriguez paused. "The reports say nothing can live there." Carter looked at the main screen. The planet below them looked angry. Massive storms covered its surface. The atmosphere glowed with strange colors. Lightning flashed constantly between the clouds. "It beats dying in space," Carter said. "Prep for emergency landing." 2 hours later, the Pioneer crashed into Zarion Prime. The ship hit the ground hard, broke apart, and skidded across rocky terrain for miles. When the wreckage finally stopped moving, 2,000 colonists found themselves stranded on a world that wanted to kill them. The planet was worse than the reports claimed. The air was poisonous. The storms never stopped. Strange creatures with too many teeth hunted in packs. The ground itself seemed alive with things that bit and stung. "We are going to die here," said Colony Administrator Kevin Park. He stood in what remained of the ship's meeting room. Around him, department heads reported one disaster after another. "The atmospheric processors are destroyed. We cannot breathe the outside air for more than a few minutes. The food storage is contaminated. The medical bay is flooded with acid rain." Dr. Susan Miller, the chief medical officer, spoke next. "I have 300 people injured. Some will not survive without proper treatment. We need to get off this planet." "With what?" Rodriguez asked. "Our communications are dead. The backup transmitter was destroyed in the crash. Even if we could call for help, it would take months for a rescue ship to reach us." Captain Carter listened to all the bad news. His people were scared. They had good reason to be, but something inside him refused to accept defeat. "We are not going to die here," he said. "Captain, with respect." "How can you be so sure?" Dr. Miller asked. "Because we are humans," Carter replied. And humans do not give up. The first week was the worst. Colonists died from the poisonous air. Others fell sick from drinking contaminated water. The storms destroyed everything they tried to build. The local animals attacked anyone who went outside. But something strange began to happen. Instead of giving up, the survivors started to adapt. Rodriguez figured out how to filter the toxic air through cloth and ship filters. Dr. Miller learned to treat poison victims with medicines made from local plants. The security team, led by Chief Helen Torres, found ways to trap and kill the predators. By the second week, they had built a small safe zone around the ship wreckage. Colonists worked in teams to expand their shelter. They learned to predict the storms and take cover before the worst hits. They started to eat local plants that Rodriguez tested and found safe. "This is impossible," said Dr. Vexney, watching from his research station light years away. The Zephyrian scientist had been monitoring the human crash site. His instruments showed that the colony should have died within days. Instead, the humans were thriving. They had not just survived the hostile environment, they were changing it. Green patches appeared around their settlement where they had planted earth crops in alien soil. The predator population was dropping as humans learned to hunt them first. "Sir, you need to see this," his assistant said. "The humans are doing something we have never observed before." Dr. Vexney looked at his screens. The humans had captured several of the local predators alive. Instead of killing them, they were trying to tame them. Within days, some of the creatures were helping humans hunt other predators. "Remarkable," Dr. Vexney whispered. "They are not just adapting to the environment, they are making the environment adapt to them." 3 months later, a Craxian rescue fleet arrived at Zerion Prime. Admiral Zektar himself commanded the mission. He expected to find bodies or maybe a few survivors barely clinging to life. Instead, his sensors detected a thriving settlement. The storm-covered wasteland had been transformed. Green fields stretched for miles around the crash site. Strange structures that looked like a mix of human engineering and alien design dotted the landscape. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the surface," his communications officer reported. "Put it through." Captain Carter's face appeared on the screen. He looked healthy and confident. Behind him, colonists moved around what looked like a bustling town square. "Welcome to New Haven Colony," Carter said with a smile. "We were wondering when someone would show up." Admiral Zektar stared in shock. "Captain Carter, we came to rescue survivors." "That is very kind of you, Admiral. But as you can see, we are doing fine. Would you like to come down for dinner? Our cooks have learned to make some amazing dishes with local ingredients." The rescue became a diplomatic visit. Zektar and his officers toured the human settlement in amazement. The colonists had not just survived on Zerion Prime, they had built something better than what they had lost. "How did you do this?" Zektar asked Carter as they walked through fields of earth vegetables growing in alien soil. "Same way humans do everything," Carter replied. "We refuse to accept that it was impossible." News of the Pioneer incident spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Species that had dismissed humans as another weak newcomer suddenly paid attention. The Zephyrians sent science teams to study human adaptability. The Mathari, who prided themselves on being the toughest warriors in space, invited humans to join their warrior trials. But the event that truly made humans legendary happened 2 years later. The Void Hunters, a species of parasitic aliens, decided to attack the peaceful world of Haven. The planet was home to millions of farmer colonists who had never seen war. The only human presence on Haven was a small research station. 37 scientists and security guards led by Dr. Paul Chen and Security Chief Helen Torres. When the Void Hunters arrived, they expected an easy meal. They were wrong. Dr. Chen was not a warrior. He studied plant genetics. His team grew new crops to feed hungry colonies. But when 3,000 Void Hunters landed on Haven, Chen became something else entirely. "We cannot fight them," Torres said. She looked at her security team of 12 guards. They had training, but not for this kind of battle. "We do not have to fight all of them," Chen replied. "We just have to fight them long enough for help to arrive." "Sir, help is 6 weeks away. We have supplies for maybe 1 week of fighting," Chen smiled. "Then we better make sure the fight lasts exactly 6 weeks. What happened next became the stuff of legend. The research team turned their agricultural equipment into weapons. Crop dusters became bombers. Irrigation systems became traps. Fertilizer became explosives. The Void Hunters had conquered dozens of worlds. They knew how to break armies and destroy cities. They had no idea how to fight farmers who refused to die. Chen and his people did not fight like soldiers. They fought like humans. When the enemy destroyed their base, they moved to the forests. When the forests were burned, they went underground. When the tunnels were flooded, they took to the hills. Each day, the Void Hunters lost more troops. Each night, human raids destroyed their supplies and equipment. The parasites began to fear the dark because that was when the humans came hunting. "This is not possible," the Void Hunter commander screamed into his communications device. "They are. 37 researchers fighting 3,000 warriors. We should have won in hours." But humans do not follow the rules that other species consider logical. When faced with impossible odds, they do not calculate their chances of success. They find ways to make success possible. By the end of the first week, Chen's team had killed 500 Void Hunters. By the end of the second week, they had captured enough enemy equipment to arm the local farmers who had joined the fight. By the third week, the Void Hunters were trapped in their own landing zones, afraid to venture out. When the rescue fleet finally arrived, they found the Void Hunters in full retreat. 3,000 of the galaxy's most feared predators were running, from 37 human researchers and a handful of farmers with gardening tools. "Dr. Chen," Admiral Blake said as he surveyed the battlefield, "my scans show you started with 37 people." "That is correct, Admiral." "How many did you lose?" Chen smiled. "We lost no one, sir, though researcher Martinez did break his ankle in week 4. The story of Haven reached every corner of known space. Species that had never heard of humans suddenly knew their names. The Galactic Council sent observers to study human tactics. Military academies across the galaxy added courses on human-style warfare. But the aliens missed the most important point. Humans had not won because they were better fighters. They had won because giving up was not in their nature. When the situation became hopeless, they simply refused to accept it. Admiral Zektar understood this better than most. He had seen humans turn disasters into victories too many times to dismiss it as luck. There was something different about the species. Ambassador Karen Williams walked through the grand hallways of the Galactic Council building. Her heels clicked against the polished floor made from stone quarried on 12 different worlds. Alien art covered the walls, showing the achievements of civilizations that had ruled space for thousands of years. Williams was not impressed. She had seen better architecture in downtown Chicago, but she kept her thoughts to herself and smiled politely at the various alien diplomats who nodded as she passed. The council chamber was already full when she arrived. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their assigned seats. The room buzzed with nervous conversation in 100 different languages. Williams took her place at the human section and waited. High Chancellor Vrex called the meeting to order. His blue skin seemed paler than usual. "We gather today to discuss the ongoing expansion of human colonies into previously unclaimed space." Williams kept her face neutral. She knew this was coming. Humanity had established 12 new colonies in the past year. Each one pushed further into unexplored regions of the galaxy. Other species were getting nervous. "The Galactic Council has always supported peaceful expansion," Vrex continued. "However, recent human activities have raised concerns about the stability of our region." Commander Thex of the Vorton Republic stood up, His forearms gestured as he spoke. The humans expand at a rate that violates all established protocols. They claim worlds without proper surveys. They build colonies on planets that should be impossible to settle. And they do it all without asking permission, added Representative Quinn of the Mathari. The Council has established procedures for expansion. Humans ignore these procedures entirely. Williams stood to respond. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the small human woman who represented the species that had the galaxy talking. Honored representatives, Williams said in a calm voice, humanity appreciates your concern for galactic stability. However, we must respectfully decline any attempt to restrict our sovereign right to explore and settle unclaimed worlds. The room erupted in angry voices. Some species demanded to know by what right humans claimed such freedom. Others argued that all expansion should be approved by the Council first. Williams waited for quiet. Then she continued. Our expansion follows the same principles that guided every species in this room. We explore, we settle, we grow. The difference is that we do it effectively. Effectively? Chancellor Vrex asked. Ambassador Williams, your people have settled worlds that our best scientists considered uninhabitable. You build colonies in regions where no other species dare to go. This is not normal expansion. Normal for whom? Williams replied. Every species in this room started somewhere. You all spread from your home worlds to claim territory across the galaxy. The Craxians conquered 14 star systems in the past decade alone. The Zephyrians have research stations in every sector. How is human expansion different? Admiral. Zektar spoke from his position at the military section. The difference, Ambassador, is that your people succeed where others would fail. This creates complications. Williams understood what he meant. Humanity's success made other species nervous. They had all grown comfortable with the idea that certain regions of space were too dangerous or difficult to colonize. Humans had proved them wrong, and that was threatening. Meanwhile, at the edge of Craxian territory, Admiral Tony Blake stood on the bridge of the UES Defender. His battle group consisted of 5 ships, escorting a convoy of colony transports toward Kepler 442b. The mission should have been routine, but nothing involving humans was ever routine anymore. Sir, we have multiple contacts on long-range sensors, reported Chief Navigator Rachel Stone. Craxian vessels. They are maintaining distance but matching our course. Blake studied the tactical display. 12 Craxian warships shadowed his small fleet. Under normal circumstances, this would be considered an act of war, but circumstances involving humans were never normal. Open a channel to the Craxian flagship, Blake ordered. The face of Admiral Korth appeared on the main screen. The Craxian officer looked uncomfortable. Admiral Blake, I trust your journey proceeds well. It does, Admiral Korth. I notice you have decided to escort us. How thoughtful. Korth's expression twitched. We are simply conducting routine patrols in this sector. Blake smiled. Of course. I am sure it has nothing to do with our destination. Both officers understood the real situation. The Craxians were not escorting the humans. They were making sure the humans actually left Craxian space and did not decide to establish a colony somewhere inconvenient. Admiral Blake, Korth said carefully, I trust you understand that any misunderstandings in this region could lead to complications. I understand perfectly, Admiral. We will continue to our assigned destination without any stops or detours. Good. Very good. The transmission ended. Blake turned to his navigation officer. How long? Until we reach the edge of Craxian territory. 6 hours, sir. And how long until the Craxians stop following us? 6 hours and 1 minute, sir. Blake laughed. The mighty Craxian Empire was essentially escorting humans out of their space to make sure they left. The same species that had terrorized half the galaxy for decades was nervous about 5 human ships and some colonists. On the transport ships, Colony Administrator Kevin Park reviewed the plans for Kepler 442b. The planet was technically habitable, but it came with challenges: high gravity, extreme weather, and an atmosphere that would require breathing masks for the first few years. His deputy, Susan Miller, looked over the geological surveys. "Kevin, are you sure about this?" "The planet looks hostile," Park smiled. "Susan, we are humans. Hostile planets are our specialty." Miller had to agree. She had read the reports from other human colonies. Humans had successfully settled worlds that other species considered uninhabitable. Desert planets, ice worlds, high-gravity monsters, low-atmosphere rocks. If humans could live somewhere, they found a way to make it work. Back in the council chamber, the debate continued. Species after species stood up to voice concerns about human expansion. Some worried about economics. Others feared military implications. A few simply admitted they were nervous about sharing the galaxy with such an unpredictable species. "The question before us," said Chancellor Vrex, "is whether the Council should establish formal limits on human expansion." A murmur ran through the room. This was the real issue. The Council wanted to contain humanity before they spread too far and became too powerful to control. Williams stood again. "May I ask a question, Chancellor?" "Of course, Ambassador." "Which article of the Galactic Charter gives this Council the right to limit the expansion of any member species?" The room became quiet. Williams had hit them with legal reality. The Galactic Council was a forum for discussion and cooperation. It was not a government with the power to control member species. The Charter allows for restrictions in cases where expansion threatens galactic stability, Vrex replied. "I see. And which human colony threatens galactic stability? Our farmers on New Eden? Our researchers on Haven Colony? Our miners on Titan Station?" Williams walked to the center of the room as she spoke. "Or perhaps the threat is that we succeed where others expect us to fail. Perhaps the real concern is that humans refuse to accept limitations that other species consider reasonable." Dr. Vexney of the Zephyrians stood up. "Ambassador Williams, with respect, your species expands at a rate that seems almost aggressive." "Aggressive toward whom, Doctor? We settle empty worlds in unclaimed space. We have not taken territory from any established species. We have not threatened any existing colonies." "But you ignore established procedures," Commander Thex protested. "We follow our own procedures," Williams corrected, "which is our right as a sovereign species." Admiral Zektar listened to the debate with growing frustration. He understood what was really happening. The Council was afraid of humans, but they could not say so directly. Instead, they were trying to use legal arguments to limit human expansion. The problem was that humans were not breaking any laws. They were just doing things that made other species uncomfortable. They settled hostile worlds. They succeeded in impossible situations. They refused to accept the limitations that other species took for granted. "Ambassador Williams," Zektar said, standing up, "may I speak plainly?" "Please do, Admiral. This Council is not really concerned about procedures or protocols. We are concerned about your people's capabilities." The room became very quiet. Williams waited for him to continue. "Your species has proven capable of surviving and thriving in conditions that would destroy others. This creates a strategic advantage that some find concerning." Williams nodded. "I appreciate your honesty, Admiral. And you are correct. Humans do possess certain advantages in colonization efforts, but these advantages come from our nature, not from any technology or weapon." "What do you mean?" asked Chancellor Vrex. "We mean that humans do not give up easily. When we decide to settle a world, we find a way to make it work. When faced with impossible odds, we look for ways to beat them. This is not a threat to other species. It is simply who we are." Representative Quinn spoke up. "But, Ambassador, your success rat." The warning came without introduction or ceremony. Every communication device in the galaxy received the same message at the same time. The signal was so powerful it overrode all other transmissions and forced itself onto every screen and speaker in known space. A figure appeared that no species had ever seen before. It was tall and thin, wrapped in dark robes that seemed to absorb light. Its face was hidden in shadows, but its voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I am the eternal conqueror of the hegemony. We have observed your civilizations from beyond the galactic rim. You have grown soft and weak in your comfortable worlds. This ends now. The figure paused, letting its words sink in across billions of worlds. You have 7 standard days to surrender unconditionally. Those who submit will serve. Those who resist will be destroyed. We have studied your histories, your strengths, your fears. All shall kneel before the hegemony's might. The transmission ended as suddenly as it had begun. Across the galaxy, panic spread like wildfire. Military bases went to full alert. Governments called emergency meetings. Citizens packed what they could carry and prepared to flee. In the Galactic Council chamber, representatives gathered in emergency session. The usual political debates seemed pointless now. Species that had argued for months about trade routes and territory claims now faced extinction. We need to know more about this hegemony, Chancellor Vrex said. His blue skin had turned almost white with fear. Who are they? Where did they come from? What do they want? Dr. Vexney of the Zephyrians consulted his instruments. Our long-range sensors detect massive fleets moving in from the outer rim. The technology readings are unlike anything we have seen. Their ships appear to be centuries ahead of our most advanced designs. Admiral Zektar stood at the military briefing table. Holographic displays showed enemy fleet movements across multiple sectors. The situation is worse than we thought. They are not coming from one direction. Hegemony forces are approaching from all sides simultaneously. How many ships? Asked Commander Thex. Conservative estimate? 10,000 vessels in the first wave. Alone. Each one appears to be larger than our biggest dreadnought. The room fell silent. The combined fleets of all Council species might total 3,000 ships. They were outnumbered more than 3-to-1 by an enemy with superior technology. What about our defensive positions? Representative Quinn asked. Zektar shook his head. The hegemony forces are avoiding all our fortified systems. They are targeting civilian worlds first. Agricultural colonies, research stations, trading posts. They want to cut off our supply lines before engaging our military. Within 48 hours, the first reports came in. The hegemony had attacked 3 peaceful worlds on the edge of Selenite territory. The battles, if they could be called battles, had lasted less than an hour each. Entire planetary populations had simply vanished. They are not killing everyone, Dr. Vexney reported. Our sensors show that populations are being removed intact, transported to their ships and taken away. Slaves, Zektar said grimly. They are harvesting people. More reports flooded in. The Trellian system had fallen. Vorthon colonies were under attack. Even the mighty Craxian military bases were retreating rather than face the hegemony directly. We need to coordinate our defenses, Chancellor Vrex announced. All species must contribute ships and personnel to a unified fleet. But fear was spreading faster than military orders. The Zephyrian Science Council voted to evacuate their core, worlds. The Mathari warrior clans began retreating toward their home system. Even some Craxian commanders were requesting permission to fall back to defensive positions. On Earth, General Patricia Hayes stood in the war room of Space Defense Command. The underground facility buzzed with activity as officers coordinated. Humanity's response to the crisis. Unlike the Council species, humans were not retreating. Status report, Hayes ordered. Colonel Rick Turner stepped forward. All human colonies have been warned of the approaching threat. Colonial defense forces are on full alert. Our fleet commanders are requesting orders. What about Admiral Blake's mission to Kepler? The convoy is still proceeding to their destination, General. Admiral Blake reports that they will establish the colony as planned unless ordered otherwise. Hayes nodded approvingly. While other species were abandoning their expansion plans, humans were continuing with business as usual. Any word from the Galactic Council? Intelligence Director Major Linda Cross consulted her reports. Chancellor Vrex has requested emergency meetings with all species leaders. They want to coordinate a unified defense strategy. And most species are more interested in evacuation plans than defense plans. The Craxians are the only ones still talking about fighting back. Hayes walked to the large strategic display that showed the galaxy. Red markers indicated hegemony fleet positions. Blue markers showed human colonies and military assets. The picture was not encouraging from a numerical standpoint. General, Colonel Turner said carefully, the enemy outnumbers our entire military by more than 50 to 1. Their technology appears superior. Perhaps we should consider diplomatic options. Hayes turned to look at her staff. These were good officers who had served humanity well, but they were thinking like the aliens now. They were calculating odds and looking for ways to avoid fighting. Colonel, what is our primary mission as the Space Defense Force? To protect human colonies and interests throughout the galaxy, General. Correct. And where does our mission statement mention surrendering when the odds are bad? Turner straightened up. It does not, General. That is right. We are not here to calculate odds. We are here to protect our people. If this hegemony wants human worlds, they are going to have to take them the hard way. Communications Officer. Lieutenant Dan Foster looked up from his station. General, we are receiving a transmission from Admiral Blake. Put him through. Admiral Blake's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, the bridge of the UES Defender showed normal operations. General Hayes, I wanted to confirm our orders regarding the Kepler mission. You are to proceed as planned, Admiral. Even with the hegemony threat? Especially with the hegemony threat. The moment we start canceling missions and retreating, we show weakness. Continue to Kepler and establish that colony. Blake smiled. Understood, General. We will not disappoint you. The transmission ended. Hayes looked around the room at her staff. Some looked worried. Others seemed confused. They were wondering how establishing one small colony could matter when the entire galaxy was under threat. General, Major Cross said, I do not understand the strategic value of continuing the Kepler mission. Surely those ships would be better used in defending established colonies. Hayes walked back to the strategic display. Major, what do you think the other species are thinking right now? That they are about to be conquered by a superior enemy. And what message does it send if humans continue expanding colonies even under these circumstances? Cross thought for a moment. Then understanding dawned on her face. That humans are not afraid. That we believe we will win. Exactly. Psychology matters in warfare. The enemy expects us to panic and retreat like everyone else. Instead, we are going to show them something they have not seen before. What is that, General? A species that does not back down. Over the next few days, the situation continued to deteriorate. 3 more star systems fell to the hegemony. Refugee ships crowded the space lanes as millions fled their homes. Some Galactic Council members began sending secret messages to the hegemony, hoping to negotiate better surrender terms. But Admiral Blake's convoy continued toward Kepler 442b. His 5 ships escorted colony transports loaded with 10,000 settlers who had volunteered to build a new world even as their galaxy burned around them. Sir, we are receiving priority communications from Earth Command, reported Chief Navigator Rachel Stone. What do they say? All human colonies are to prepare for siege conditions. Military assets are being recalled to protect core worlds. We are ordered to... Wait, sir. There is a separate message for you alone. Blake opened his personal communication channel. General Hayes appeared on his private screen. Tony, I want you to know what you are really doing out there. Every species in the galaxy is watching to see if humans will continue expanding or if we will retreat like everyone else. Your mission has become more important than just establishing one colony. Blake understood. We represent humanity's refusal to be intimidated. Correct. The colonists with you volunteered to build a new world. They did not volunteer to run away from threats. Give them the chance to do what they came to do. We will. General. Hayes's expression became serious. Tony, there is something else. Intelligence suggests the hegemony will target human colonies specifically. They see us as the greatest potential threat to their expansion. Because we do not surrender. Easily. Because we do not surrender at all. Be ready for anything. The convoy reached Kepler 442b 3 days later. The planet looked as hostile as the surveys had indicated. Massive storms covered half the surface. The gravity was 40% higher than Earth normal. The atmosphere would require breathing, masks for the first few years of settlement. Colony Administrator Kevin Park stood on the bridge of the lead transport, looking down at his new home. It looks challenging, he admitted. The best worlds usually are, Admiral Blake replied. Are your people ready? Park smiled. Admiral, we the hegemony fleet arrived at Kepler 442b like a dark storm. 50 massive ships dropped out of hyperspace around the newly established human colony. Each vessel was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Admiral Blake watched them appear on his sensors. His small fleet of 5 ships looked like toys compared to the enemy armada. Any rational military commander would have ordered immediate retreat. Blake was not feeling particularly rational. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the enemy flagship, reported Communications Officer Lieutenant Karen Ross. Put it through. The Eternal Conqueror appeared on the main screen. His shadowed face turned toward Blake with what might have been amusement. I am told that humans refuse to surrender. How interesting. You have 5 ships against 50. Your colony is defenseless. Surely even your stubborn species can see that resistance is pointless. Blake stood calmly on his bridge. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with steady efficiency. No panic, no fear, just humans doing their jobs. Respectfully decline your offer, Blake said. You decline? The Conqueror seemed genuinely surprised. I am offering you the chance to live as slaves rather than die as fools. We choose option 3. There is no option 3. Blake smiled. There is now. The transmission ended. Blake turned to his tactical officer. Lieutenant Stone, signal the colony. Tell them we are about to get busy up here. On the planet's surface, Colony Administrator Kevin Park received the message in the command center they had built into a converted cargo container. Around him, 10,000 colonists continued with the work of building a new world. Sir, the Admiral says the hegemony fleet is about to attack, his deputy Susan Miller reported. Park looked around at his people. Farmers, engineers, teachers, doctors, families who had come to build something new among the stars. They had signed up for hard work and hostile weather. Now they faced something much worse. Options? Park asked his security chief. Gary Wilson had been a Marine before becoming a colonist. He looked at the defensive preparations they had made. Sir, we have some small arms and a few military-grade force fields. Against a fleet that size, our chances are not good. Gary, did you come here to calculate odds or to build a colony? Wilson smiled. To build a colony, sir. Then that is what we keep doing. Anyone who wants to fight can fight. Anyone who wants to keep building can keep building. But no one has to do anything they do not want to do. Susan Miller looked at him in amazement. Kevin, you are giving people the choice to keep farming while we are under attack? Susan, what do you think happens to a colony if everyone stops, working every time there is danger? We came here to make this world our home. If we stop doing that, we have already lost. In space above them, the battle began. Admiral Blake's 5 ships moved like dancers around the massive hegemony vessels. The UES defender led the attack, diving between enemy ships and firing everything it had. The hegemony had superior numbers and firepower, but they had never fought humans before. Blake's ships did not follow standard tactical doctrine. They attacked from impossible angles, used the planet's gravity well to slingshot around obstacles, and targeted enemy ships in ways that made no strategic sense. "Sir, the human tactics are unusual," reported the hegemony tactical officer. The Eternal Conqueror watched the battle with growing frustration. His ships should have won in minutes. Instead, 3 of them were already damaged, and 1 was completely disabled. "Explain." "They are not trying to win a traditional engagement, sir. They appear to be buying time." "Time for what? Reinforcements? Evacuation?" "Unknown, sir. But their colony ships are still landing supplies on the planet. The surface construction continues." The Conqueror stared at the display in disbelief. The humans were under attack by a vastly superior force, and they were still building their colony. It was either incredibly brave or completely insane. On the surface, colonist Nina Davis led a team that was installing the main power generator for the settlement's industrial complex. Enemy ships filled the sky above them, trading fire with Admiral Blake's fleet, but Davis and her team kept working. "Nina, should we not be taking cover?" asked one of her engineers. "Cover from what? If those big ships start shooting at us, there is no place to hide on this planet. We might as well finish our job." Above them, the destroyer UES Relentless took a direct hit from a hegemony dreadnought. The ship's hull cracked and atmosphere vented into space. Captain Lisa Rodriguez ordered her crew to abandon ship, but stayed at her post to keep the weapons firing. "Captain, we need to go," her first officer said. "In a minute," Rodriguez replied. She lined up one last shot at the enemy command ship. The Relentless was dying around her, but she was going to make it count. What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. Instead of trying to escape, Rodriguez aimed her crippled ship directly at the hegemony flagship. The destroyer accelerated toward the massive enemy vessel like a guided missile. "Sir, the human ship is on a collision course," the hegemony tactical officer reported. "Impossible. No captain would sacrifice their ship and crew for such a minor tactical advantage." "Sir, the human captain is the only one still aboard. She sent her crew to escape pods and is piloting the ship herself." The Conqueror watched in amazement as the small human destroyer slammed into his flagship. The explosion ripped through both ships, causing catastrophic damage to the hegemony command vessel and completely destroying the human ship. Captain Rodriguez died in that explosion, but her sacrifice took out the hegemony's command and control center, throwing their entire fleet into confusion. Admiral Blake seized the advantage immediately. "All ships, concentrate fire on their communication arrays. Cut them off from each other." The battle that should have lasted minutes stretched into hours. Blake's remaining ships darted around the enemy fleet like angry wasps, hitting weak points, and disappearing before the hegemony could respond effectively. But the real shock came from the planet's surface. As the space battle raged, the colonists had not stopped working. They had turned their construction equipment into weapons. Mining charges became bombs. Construction mechs became combat vehicles. Atmospheric processors became missile launchers. "Sir, the human colony is firing at our ships," the hegemony tactical officer reported. The Conqueror looked at his screens in disbelief. The surface of Kepler 442b lit up with weapons fire as 10,000 human colonists joined the battle. Farmers and engineers were shooting at warships with improvised weapons. "This is not possible," the Conqueror said. "They are civilians, but humans do not recognize the difference between soldiers and civilians when their homes are threatened." Every colonist who could hold a weapon became a fighter. Every piece of equipment became a potential weapon. The entire planet became a fortress. Colony Administrator Park coordinated the surface defenses from his command center. "Susan, how are we doing on ammunition?" "We are making more as fast as we can. The fabrication units are running at full capacity." "And the farms?" Team 7 finished planting the north sector an hour ago. They are now setting up anti-aircraft positions in the cornfields. Only humans would plant crops and build missile batteries at the same time during a space battle. But that was exactly what made them dangerous. They refused to choose between survival and progress. They did both simultaneously. The turning point came when Admiral Blake made a desperate gamble. His ship, the UES Defender, had taken severe damage. His fleet was down to 3 operational vessels. The enemy still had 47 ships in fighting condition. "Sir, we cannot keep this up much longer," his tactical officer reported. Blake looked at the strategic display. His ships were running out of ammunition and spare parts. The enemy was starting to coordinate their attacks more effectively. In a few more hours, the human fleet would be completely destroyed. But Blake had noticed something about the hegemony ships. They were designed for overwhelming firepower and massive size. They were not designed for extended combat against fast, small targets. Their systems were overheating from continuous use. "All ships, new targeting priorities," Blake announced. "Ignore their weapons. Hit their cooling systems." It was a desperate plan based on a slim observation, but it worked. The massive hegemony vessels began shutting down as their overheated systems failed. One by one, they became sitting targets. For the human fighters, the battle lasted 72 hours total. When it finally ended, the space around Kepler 442b was filled with debris from both fleets. Admiral Blake's force was reduced to 1 heavily damaged ship, but the hegemony fleet was completely destroyed. The Eternal Conqueror found himself a prisoner on his own flagship, which had been captured by human boarding parties led by Colonial Security Chief Gary Wilson. The man who had conquered dozens of worlds was defeated by farmers with welding torches and determination. "How?" the Conqueror asked when Blake came to see him. "You had 5 ships. I had 50. Your people are not warriors." Blake looked at the defeated alien leader. "You made the same mistake everyone makes about humans. You thought we would fight like you expected us to fight." "What do you mean?" "You expected us to surrender when the odds were bad. You expected us to retreat when things got difficult. Yo,